The scream echoed through the maternity wing just before midnight. "That child is mine!" The words slammed against the polished hospital walls with enough force that several nurses stopped where they stood. Dr. Ethan Morris didn't flinch. He lowered the patient's chart, adjusted his glasses, and answered with the calm voice of a man who had spent 20 years delivering impossible news. "Mr. Bennett, according to your medical records, that would be medically impossible. If you enjoy emotional stories filled with betrayal, family secrets, second chances, and shocking twists that change everything in a single night, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Now, let's begin." Emma Carter had only come to St. Gabriel Medical Center to pick up her revised night schedule. That was supposed to be the entire trip. 10 minutes, maybe 12. Then she'd drive home, microwave leftover pasta, answer 2 emails she'd been avoiding, and finally sleep. Instead, she stood frozen outside labor room 308, holding a paper cup of coffee that had already gone cold. Because she recognized that voice. Even after 8 years, she would have recognized it anywhere. Nathan Bennett, her former husband, the man she'd once believed she would spend her entire life beside, the same man who divorced her, remarried less than 7 months later, and quietly allowed an entire town to believe she had destroyed their marriage because she couldn't give him children. Inside the room, his voice cracked again. "You're wrong." The doctor remained patient. "I'm looking at your fertility evaluation from 8 years ago." Emma felt every muscle in her body tighten. 8 years, the exact timing, their evaluation, the appointment that had ended everything. Nathan shook his head. "No, that was my ex-wife." He swallowed. She was the one with the problem. The words landed like broken glass. Even now, even after all these years, Emma closed her eyes. Because once again, he had repeated the lie she'd carried on her shoulders long after their marriage died. The lie that made women in church hug her with pity. The lie that made older neighbors whisper, "Poor Emma. Maybe motherhood just wasn't meant for her." The lie that protected Nathan. Inside the room, the doctor spoke more firmly. "Sir, your medical file indicates severe male infertility. We need truthful information immediately, because your wife is experiencing serious complications." Silence. Heavy. Terrifying. Emma opened her eyes. She saw Nathan's new wife, Vanessa, 29. Beautiful, elegant, successful, curled against the hospital bed, soaked in sweat. Another contraction hit. She cried out. "Nathan." Then, for only a fraction of a second, Vanessa looked directly at him. Emma noticed something almost nobody else would have. She'd been an emergency nurse for 15 years. She knew fear. This wasn't fear of labor. It wasn't fear of surgery. It wasn't fear of dying. It was the fear of a secret reaching daylight. Nathan saw it too. His entire face changed. Confusion, recognition, then disbelief. Emma should have walked away. She knew that. Instead, her feet refused to move, because memory is cruel. It doesn't ask permission. 8 years earlier, Nathan Bennett had built her a bookshelf before he'd ever bought an engagement ring. He insisted every serious reader deserved solid shelves. Books shouldn't live in cardboard boxes, he'd told her. They deserve a home. Emma laughed because he arrived carrying more lumber than any apartment bookshelf could possibly require. By sunset, the living room was covered in sawdust. Nathan's shirt was ruined. The bookshelf leaned slightly to the left. It wasn't perfect. Neither were they. But she loved it. Months later, during a thunderstorm, he forgot the fancy proposal he'd spent weeks planning. The restaurant reservation disappeared. The flowers got soaked. He panicked, dropped to one knee beside her car in the pouring rain, and asked anyway. She never cared about the restaurant. She said yes before he finished speaking. Their marriage wasn't glamorous. It wasn't expensive. It was ordinary, beautifully ordinary. Saturday pancakes, movie nights on old blankets, arguments over whose turn it was to buy groceries, laughing because neither of them could keep houseplants alive. Nathan danced while making pasta. Emma sang terribly on purpose. Life felt simple, safe, real. When they finally decided to have a baby, Nathan transformed the smallest bedroom into a nursery before Emma had even missed her first cycle. Soft green walls, a white rocking chair, tiny stars painted across the ceiling. He spent 3 weekends building a crib by hand because, according to him, store-bought furniture had no personality. Emma still remembered standing in that doorway, hand resting against her perfectly flat stomach, imagining lullabies, imagining birthdays, imagining tiny footsteps racing across hardwood floors. Hope smelled like fresh paint. The first year passed. Nothing happened. Friends announced pregnancies. Baby showers filled weekends. Emma smiled through everyone. Nathan squeezed her hand afterward. Our turn's coming. She believed him. The second year, they began seeing specialists. Blood work, hormone tests, ultrasounds, endless appointments. Waiting rooms filled with couples avoiding eye contact. Every month ended exactly the same. Another negative test. Another quiet drive home. Another promise. Next month. At first, the disappointment made them gentler. They held each other longer, talked later into the night, refused to let disappointment become blame. But grief changes shape. Slowly, almost invisibly. It settles into tiny places, into conversations, into silence, into ordinary evenings. Nathan stopped joking as much. Emma started pretending she wasn't crying in the shower. Neither noticed exactly when hope became exhaustion. Then there were Nathan's parents. Richard Bennett believed emotions were a weakness. Everything in life was about legacy, reputation, family name, success. Every Sunday dinner ended exactly the same way. So, he'd say while carving roast beef, "When are you giving me a grandson?" Never. "How are you both?" Never. "Are you happy?" Only, the Bennett name has to continue. As though children were business investments. His wife, Margaret, was quieter, which somehow made her worse. She'd smile kindly, touch Emma's arm, and whisper things like, "Stress affects women differently." Or, "Sometimes the body knows before the heart does." Always sounding sympathetic, always implying Emma was the problem. Emma learned to smile until her cheeks hurt. Then came the appointment. Nathan couldn't attend. A construction emergency at work. "I'll meet you afterward," he'd promised. Emma wasn't worried. She assumed this was another routine consultation. Dr. Aaron Blake entered carrying a thin folder. He sat, looked through several pages, then folded his hands. "Emma," he began gently, "your results are completely normal." Relief flooded through her instantly. She smiled. "Oh, so what do we try next?" The doctor didn't answer immediately. That pause would divide her life into before and after. "The concern," he said quietly, "is Nathan's testing." Emma blinked. "What concern?" He inhaled carefully. "There is significant male infertility." Everything inside her stopped. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Someone laughed in the hallway. A printer clicked somewhere nearby. Life continued. Only hers didn't, she whispered. "Are you certain?" Dr. Blake nodded. We repeated the analysis twice. Emma looked down at the folder. Nathan, her sweet, gentle, proud Nathan, raised by a father who believed masculinity solved every problem, a father who mocked weakness, who judged failure, who measured worth in achievements. She already knew, before leaving the office, what would happen if Richard Bennett ever discovered the truth. Dr. Blake offered to schedule another appointment. Bring Nathan in tomorrow. Emma nodded automatically, but she couldn't think. She only wanted to get home, to breathe, to somehow prepare herself before speaking to the man she loved. She never got the chance, because Margaret Bennett called first. "Could you stop by for a minute?" Emma almost declined. Instead, she drove there. Margaret opened the front door before Emma even knocked. "I've been waiting." Emma frowned. "You knew I had the appointment?" Margaret hesitated. "Dr. Blake is an old family friend." Emma suddenly felt sick. Margaret already knew. She closed the kitchen door softly, then asked, "So, you've seen the results?" Emma nodded. Neither woman spoke for several seconds. Finally, Margaret whispered, "Richard must never know." Emma stared. "What?" "You heard me. He'll destroy Nathan." Emma shook her head. "No, we'll tell Nathan privately. We'll decide together." Margaret stepped closer. "You don't understand my husband." "No, I understand perfectly. If Richard finds out," Margaret continued, "he'll humiliate Nathan every day for the rest of his life." Emma felt anger rising. "So?" Margaret looked directly into her eyes. "Tell everyone it's you." Emma laughed. Not because anything was funny, because sometimes the human brain laughs when reality becomes unbearable. "You can't possibly mean that." "I'm asking you to protect him. I'm his wife." "Exactly," Emma whispered. "So your solution is sacrificing me?" Margaret reached for her hands. Emma pulled away. My son couldn't survive that shame. Emma looked toward the family photographs covering the kitchen wall. Nathan at 12. Nathan graduating college. Nathan shaking Richard's hand after joining the family business. Every picture told the same story. Be perfect. Or disappear. Margaret's voice softened. Please. Emma closed her eyes. She thought about Nathan, about the nursery he'd painted himself, about the tiny baby shoes still hidden in his dresser, about the way he'd kiss her forehead. Every month after another, disappointment and whisper. We'll keep trying. She loved him, more than she'd ever loved herself. And sometimes, that is the most dangerous kind of love. I'll do it, she whispered, but only temporarily. Margaret nodded immediately. Relief spread across her face. Emma didn't notice. That relief never comes that quickly. Unless someone has already decided the outcome, the lie was supposed to last a few weeks. Long enough for Nathan to hear the truth privately. Long enough for him to find the strength to face his father. That was what Emma kept telling herself. Instead, the lie became the foundation of an entirely different life. 3 nights later, the Bennett family gathered for Sunday dinner. Richard carved the roast. Margaret poured wine. Nathan sat beside Emma, squeezing her hand under the table every few minutes, trying to reassure her without words. He still didn't know. He smiled at her with complete trust. That almost made it impossible. Richard finally looked across the table. So, what did the doctor say? Silence spread across the dining room. Emma looked toward Margaret. Margaret didn't move, didn't speak, didn't rescue her. Instead, she lowered her eyes, leaving Emma completely alone. Nathan smiled nervously. We're still figuring things out. Richard snorted. Either it works or it doesn't. Emma felt something collapse inside her. She heard herself answer before she'd fully decided to. The issue is with me. Silence, heavy, final. Richard leaned back in his chair. Well, at least we finally know. That was all. No sympathy, no kindness, just relief, because now there was someone to blame. Nathan turned toward Emma immediately. His eyes filled with pain. He reached beneath the table and took both her hands. I'm sorry. Emma almost cried. Not because Richard blamed her. Because Nathan believed it from that evening forward. Everything changed. Not dramatically, quietly, which is always more dangerous. Family gatherings became conversations about treatments, diet changes, stress management, alternative medicine. Margaret mailed articles. Richard made jokes. Neighbors stopped asking when the baby was coming. Instead, they offered pity. Emma became the poor infertile wife. Nathan became the devoted husband standing beside her. The lie worked perfectly, too perfectly. At first, Nathan was even more loving. He brought flowers, cooked dinner, held her while she cried. Only, she wasn't crying because she couldn't have children. She was crying because every time he comforted her, he was comforting himself. Without even knowing it, she lived inside a lie that rewarded everyone except the person carrying it. Months passed. Then another year, treatments failed because there had never been anything wrong with Emma. Each failed attempt simply strengthened the false story everyone believed. Richard became increasingly impatient. I told you we should have adopted years ago. Margaret would quickly interrupt. Richard, but the damage was already done. Emma smiled politely, then cried in the shower where nobody could hear. Nathan slowly began changing too. Not cruelly, not intentionally. He simply became tired, disappointed, exhausted. He worked later, came home quieter, stopped mentioning the nursery. The tiny crib collected dust. The little moon-shaped nightlight stayed unplugged. Hope slowly became another room they avoided entering. One rainy afternoon, Emma came home early from work. Nathan wasn't there. His laptop sat open on the dining table. She had no intention of touching it. Then a message appeared, from someone named Vanessa. She almost closed the screen. Instead, the next notification appeared before she could. You deserve someone who makes life lighter. Emma stared. Another message. You carry too much alone. Nothing romantic. Nothing explicit. That somehow made it worse. Because emotional affairs rarely begin with declarations. They begin with understanding, validation, attention, everything missing somewhere else. Nathan walked through the front door 10 minutes later. Emma simply turned the laptop toward him. I wasn't looking. It appeared. Nathan stopped. His face changed. Not into surprise, into guilt. That told her everything. Emma, It isn't what you think, she asked quietly. Then tell me what it is. He rubbed both hands over his face. I can talk to her. Emma blinked. You talk to me. No. His answer came too quickly. You cry. You withdraw. Everything feels... He searched for the word. Heavy. The sentence landed harder than shouting ever could. Heavy. That was what she'd become. Not his wife. Not his partner. His burden. He walked toward her. I didn't mean... Emma raised one hand. No. Don't fix the sentence. You already finished it. They tried counseling. 3 sessions. Nathan attended physically. Emotionally, he'd already left. Emma tried telling him they needed distance from his parents. Nathan defended them. They're trying. Emma wanted to scream. Trying? Margaret had built the lie. Richard had lived inside it happily. But Nathan couldn't see that. Because if he admitted what they'd done, he'd have to admit what Emma had sacrificed. And he wasn't ready. 2 months later, he packed a suitcase. There wasn't a dramatic fight. No broken dishes. No screaming. Sometimes marriages die quietly. That hurts even more. Nathan stood in the hallway holding one suitcase. I need space. Emma nodded once. She already knew. The space had someone else's name. The divorce papers arrived 6 weeks later. Emma signed them without arguing. At the courthouse, Nathan reached toward her after signing. His fingers stopped halfway. He lowered his hand. Outside, Margaret hugged her son tightly. Richard clapped him on the shoulder. Emma stood alone holding the blue divorce folder. Nobody hugged her. Nobody thanked her. Nobody apologized. The town filled in the blanks itself. They always do. People assumed infertility destroyed the marriage. Some quietly blamed Emma. Others pitied Nathan. Nobody knew the truth. Margaret certainly wasn't going to tell it. 6 months later, Nathan married Vanessa. The wedding photos filled social media. Sunflowers, laughter, champagne. Emma looked once, then deleted every picture friends accidentally sent her. She refused to become the woman who watched someone else's happiness through a screen. Then, 3 months after their wedding, Vanessa announced she was pregnant. The town celebrated. Richard hosted a family barbecue. Margaret cried with happiness. People smiled knowingly. I guess it was meant to happen. Emma heard those exact words twice at the grocery store. She smiled politely, bought her vegetables, drove home, locked the front door, then walked upstairs, opened the closet, took out the little moon-shaped nursery lamp, and smashed it against the bathroom sink. Not because she hated babies, because she finally hated lies. Back in the present, the monitor inside labor room 308 began screaming. Medical staff rushed past. A resident called for neonatal specialists. Someone shouted for blood products. Vanessa cried out again. Nathan looked completely lost. The doctor pointed toward the hallway. Sir, you need to step aside. No, I said move. Vanessa grabbed his wrist weakly. Nathan, please. He looked at her. Really looked. Not with love. With questions. Questions that had arrived 8 years too late. Then, his eyes lifted. They met Emma's. Across the room. Across nearly a decade. Across every lie they'd ever survived. Emma, he whispered. She should have turned around. Instead, training took over. She was still a nurse. Patience came first. Always. She stepped forward. Pulled on gloves. Fastened her gown. Professional. Steady. Untouchable. No one in that operating room would have guessed. Her entire past had just walked. Back into her life. The obstetrician looked up. Good. We need another experienced nurse. Emma nodded once. I'm here. The room exploded into motion. Vanessa's blood pressure crashed. The fetal monitor dipped. Another physician arrived. The words came rapidly. Placental abruption. We're losing time. Prep the OR. Within seconds, Vanessa's bed disappeared through the operating doors. Nathan tried to follow. The anesthesiologist blocked him. You'll have to wait here. Nathan stared after the disappearing bed, then quietly asked, The baby's going to be okay. The doctor hesitated. We're going to do everything we can. Not your baby, just the baby. Nathan heard the difference. Emma saw it happen. The first crack, the first real fracture, the moment certainty died. She had a feeling. The longest night of all their lives had only just begun. The operating room doors slammed shut. Silence rushed into the hallway almost as violently as the emergency team had rushed out. Nathan stood staring at the red surgical light above the doors. It glowed steadily, mercilessly. Emma removed her gloves. Her hands were perfectly steady. She'd worked emergency medicine for nearly 15 years. She'd seen shootings, car wrecks, heart attacks, children who never made it home. She knew how to separate herself from tragedy. Tonight, that skill felt dangerously thin. Nathan finally spoke without looking at her. "Tell me." Emma remained quiet. He turned. "Please." His voice cracked on the last word. "I deserve the truth." Emma looked at the floor for several seconds. "You deserved it 8 years ago." He swallowed. "Then tell me now." She nodded once. "The fertility diagnosis. It was never mine." Nathan blinked. "What?" "The tests. They were yours." He stared. No reaction, as though his mind refused to translate the sentence. Emma continued quietly. "Dr. Blake told me first. I drove straight to your parents' house." His breathing became uneven. "My mother," Emma nodded. "Already knew," Nathan whispered. "No, she asked me to protect you." His forehead wrinkled. "Protect me?" "She begged me to let everyone believe I couldn't have children." His face slowly lost all color. Emma had never seen a person become pale so quickly. "My mother asked you to lie?" "Yes." Nathan took one slow step backward. "I don't—" He stopped. His voice disappeared. Emma didn't rescue him. She'd rescued him once already. It had cost her 8 years. "I'm sorry," he whispered. She looked directly into his eyes. So was I. The hallway doors opened. Margaret Bennett hurried toward them, wearing an expensive wool coat thrown hastily over her pajamas. "Nathan." She looked terrified. "I came as soon as—" Then she saw Emma. Everything stopped. 3 people. 1 hallway. 1 lie that had finally run out of places to hide. Nathan looked at his mother. His voice came out strangely calm. "Did you know?" Margaret froze. "Nathan, answer me." She looked toward Emma, then back to her son. "Not here." He laughed once. A broken sound. "So that's a yes." "Nathan, my wife is in surgery. The doctor just told me I can't be the father. My ex-wife says the infertility was never hers." He stepped closer. "I'm asking one question. Did you know?" Margaret closed her eyes. When she opened them, there was no denial left. "I was protecting you." Nathan stared at her. Those 4 words seemed to echo endlessly. "I protected your future." "You protected—" he repeated slowly. "You protected—" "Who?" She reached for his arm. "Your father would have destroyed you." Nathan pulled away. "So instead, not you destroyed Emma." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "I never meant—" Emma interrupted quietly. "You never meant for it to last." Margaret looked at her. "No." Emma nodded. "But every month became another month. Every holiday. Every family dinner. Every whisper. You watched it happen. You never stopped it." Margaret opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Because there was nothing left to defend. Nathan covered his face with both hands. "I blamed you," he whispered toward Emma. "I let everyone blame you." Emma smiled sadly. "You did. I thought you couldn't forgive yourself." Emma shook her head. "I couldn't forgive myself. For lying." Before anyone could speak again, the operating room doors burst open. A pediatric resident hurried toward Nathan carrying paperwork. "The baby is alive." Nathan looked up immediately. "And Vanessa?" "She's stable. But there's significant blood loss. We need consent for additional procedures." Nathan signed without reading. His signature shook. "The doctor disappeared again," Margaret quietly said. "Thank God." Nathan rounded on her. "No, you don't get to thank God tonight." She stared. "You had 8 years." "You never thanked Emma." The words landed like stones. Margaret actually flinched. Emma had never seen that happen before. Hours passed. The hospital slowly settled into that strange silence that only exists between midnight and sunrise. Machines beeped softly. Cleaning staff polished already clean floors. Coffee grew colder. The world outside continued turning. Inside, everything had changed. Around 3 a.m, someone hurried through the main entrance. Liam Foster, Nathan's business partner, his oldest friend. He looked breathless, panicked. "Nathan." Is Vanessa okay? Nathan turned slowly. Emma noticed something instantly. Liam wasn't looking toward surgery. He wasn't asking about the baby. He was watching Nathan's face, studying it, searching for information. Nathan noticed too. She's alive. Liam visibly relaxed. Far too much. Nathan's eyes narrowed. You seem relieved. Liam forced a laugh. Of course I am. Nathan took one step closer. Why? Liam's confidence cracked. Only slightly. But enough. Emma saw it. Nathan saw it too. When did it start? Liam blinked. What? When? Liam didn't answer. Nathan asked again. When? Silence. That silence became the answer. Nathan whispered, No. Liam lowered his head. I'm sorry. Nathan stared. No. 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 One clean punch. Nothing dramatic. Nothing wild. Just years of betrayal condensed into a single movement. Liam hit the waiting room chairs and fell hard. Blood appeared immediately beneath his lip. Security rushed over. Nobody tried to stop Nathan, not because violence was acceptable. Because every person standing there understood exactly why it had happened. Liam didn't fight back. He simply whispered, It wasn't supposed to happen. Nathan looked down at him. You married my wife. You stood beside me. You held my son. His voice broke. And all this time, Liam closed his eyes. I'm sorry. Nathan laughed. There isn't a word small enough for what you've done. Security escorted Liam away. Emma watched him disappear down the hallway. Another life leaving. Another illusion ending. Margaret quietly whispered. People are watching. Nathan turned toward her so slowly that Emma actually felt sorry for Margaret. That's still what you're worried about? His voice was almost calm. People watching? My whole marriage died because of what people might think. My first marriage died because of what you wanted people to think. And tonight, he pointed toward the operating room. My second one died because nobody told the truth. Margaret began crying openly. Nathan simply walked away, for the first time in his life. He left his mother standing completely alone. Emma watched him disappear toward the neonatal intensive care unit. She knew, without understanding how, that she was about to follow him. Because some nights, no matter how badly they've broken your heart, two people still find themselves standing beside the same fragile life. Nathan found the neonatal intensive care unit almost by instinct. Or perhaps by guilt. The hallway was dim, lit only by pale blue night lights that reflected softly against polished floors. Inside the NICU, everything moved differently, quietly, carefully. Machines whispered instead of beeped. Nurses walked instead of hurried. Every sound seemed afraid to disturb the tiny lives fighting inside incubators. Nathan stopped in front of one clear plastic bassinet. The little boy lay beneath warm lights, wrapped in wires no thicker than pieces of thread. He looked impossibly small. Too small for all the chaos waiting outside those glass walls. Emma arrived a few moments later. She didn't mean to follow him. Yet somehow, she had. Neither of them spoke. The baby stretched one tiny hand into the air. Nathan's voice finally broke the silence. He has my grandfather's ears. Emma turned toward him. Nathan gave a hollow smile. I know. It's ridiculous. He isn't mine. But my brain keeps searching for pieces of my family anyway. Emma looked back at the baby. Love does that. It notices connections before facts. Nathan laughed quietly. The laugh dissolved almost immediately into something closer to grief. I don't even know what I'm supposed to feel. You don't have to know, Emma answered gently. You only have to be honest. He nodded slowly. For the first time in years, I think I finally am. A neonatal nurse stepped beside them. The surgery was successful. Your wife is stable. Nathan didn't answer immediately. Instead, he asked, The baby? He's critical. But he's fighting. The nurse smiled softly. Strong heartbeat. Strong lungs. He's giving us every reason to keep believing. Nathan stared through the glass. So small. The nurse nodded. They usually surprise us. Nearly an hour passed before another doctor approached. Mr. Bennett. Your wife is awake. Nathan closed his eyes briefly. I'll come. He looked toward Emma. I don't know what I'm walking into. Emma answered honestly. Neither does she. Vanessa's hospital room felt strangely quiet. The bright confidence she always carried had disappeared. She looked exhausted. Older somehow, The surgery had drained every ounce of energy she possessed. Nathan remained standing near the door. Neither of them spoke for several seconds. Finally, Vanessa whispered, "The baby? Alive." She closed her eyes. A tear rolled slowly across her cheek. Thank God. Nathan didn't move. Then he asked the only question left. Who is his father? Vanessa inhaled sharply. I knew you'd ask. I deserve the answer. She stared toward the ceiling. His name is Liam. Nathan nodded once. No anger, no shouting, just confirmation. I suspected. Vanessa gave a tired laugh. Of course you did. I saw your face. She looked toward him carefully. I never planned this. Nathan almost smiled. Nobody ever does. Vanessa cried quietly. It happened once. We'd been fighting. You were working late. Liam stayed after a meeting. I told myself it meant nothing. Nathan listened without interrupting. When I found out I was pregnant, I convinced myself it had to be yours. You wanted this baby so much. I wanted to believe it too. Nathan looked down. You married me. Vanessa nodded. I thought if I believed the lie long enough, it would become true. Nathan whispered. I know that feeling. Those words surprised even him, because suddenly, he wasn't only talking about Vanessa. He was talking about Emma, about himself, about every lie they'd all lived inside. Vanessa turned her head toward him. There was something else. Nathan waited. She hesitated. Your mother visited me. His stomach tightened. When? The week before our wedding. Nathan felt cold. What did she say? Vanessa swallowed. She told me never to mention fertility testing. She said, the past destroys marriages. Nathan slowly closed his eyes. Even now, even after everything, Margaret had still been protecting appearances. Still hiding truth, still choosing silence. I almost told you, Vanessa whispered. 12 times. Nathan nodded sadly. I believe you. She looked surprised. You do? I know what it's like to live inside someone else's expectations. Vanessa covered her face and cried. Real crying. Not elegant, not controlled, just broken. Nathan quietly walked out. There was nothing left to say. Morning sunlight began spilling across the hospital windows. Emma sat alone in the staff lounge drinking coffee that had long since gone cold. Someone knocked gently. Nathan stood there. He looked older than he had 12 hours earlier, as though one night had aged him 10 years. Can I sit? Emma nodded. He sat across from her. For several minutes, they simply watched steam disappear from untouched coffee cups. Finally, Nathan spoke. I kept blaming fate. Emma looked at him. It was easier. If you couldn't have children, then nobody had failed. Emma remained silent. I needed someone to blame. He smiled bitterly. And you loved me enough to volunteer. Emma stared into her coffee. I thought I was protecting you. I know. No. She looked up. You don't. I wasn't protecting you from your father. I was protecting the version of you I believed existed. Nathan's eyes filled. And he didn't. Emma nodded once. Not then. He whispered, I betrayed the only person who was fighting for me. Emma didn't answer, because it was true. Several hours later, the hospital social worker arrived. She carried paperwork. Mrs. Bennett has requested voluntary surrender forms. Nathan looked confused. What? She wishes to relinquish parental rights. Emma's head lifted immediately. The social worker continued gently. She believes the baby deserves a different future. Nathan stood motionless, then slowly sat back down, as though his legs simply stopped working. Emma watched the realization settle over him. First, his wife. Then, his best friend. Then, his mother. Now, the child he'd already started loving, being abandoned before even leaving intensive care. Nathan whispered almost to himself. I painted his room. Emma felt her chest tighten. What? I built a crib. I read parenting books. I practiced installing a car seat. He laughed quietly. I even argued online about diaper brands. Emma smiled sadly despite herself. Some wounds were so familiar. They hurt twice. I did all that once too, she admitted softly. Nathan looked at her. Neither of them needed to explain which nursery they were remembering. The same dream. Built twice. Lost twice. Only this time, one tiny heartbeat was still fighting, and neither of them could walk away from it. Nathan didn't sign the surrender papers. Not immediately. He stared at them for a long time. The pages rested on the small hospital table between him and the social worker. Only 3 signatures were needed. 3 lines of ink that would permanently change one little boy's future. Finally, Nathan asked quietly, "What happens if I don't sign?" The social worker folded her hands. "Legally, you aren't the biological father, so you aren't obligated. But," she smiled gently, "you've been present since birth. If you wish to petition for guardianship later, that's a conversation we can have." Nathan looked toward the NICU hallway. "I've been talking to him every day." "I know. I read to him." "I know. I tell him good morning." The social worker nodded. "I know." Nathan laughed softly through tired eyes. "I guess everyone knows." She smiled. "The nurses talk. They say he calms down when he hears your voice." Emma looked away. Something tightened painfully inside her chest. 3 days later, Vanessa left the hospital. She didn't ask to see the baby. She signed every document quietly. No dramatic speech, no excuses. Only one sentence before walking away. "I hope someone loves him better than I knew how." Emma watched her disappear through the sliding hospital doors. She never saw Vanessa again. The baby remained in intensive care. 21 days. Nathan never missed one. Not one sunrise. Not one evening feeding. He learned how to sterilize bottles, how to change microscopic diapers, how to hold a premature infant against his chest using skin-to-skin therapy. The nurses quietly started calling him Dad. No one corrected them. Emma tried keeping her distance. She really did. But every shift somehow brought her past the NICU. Sometimes she checked a monitor. Sometimes she adjusted a blanket. Sometimes she simply stood outside the glass for a minute longer than necessary. She told herself it was because she cared about every patient. That wasn't entirely true. One rainy afternoon, Nathan found her watching through the nursery window. "He grabbed my finger today." Emma smiled. "They usually do." He wouldn't let go. "They usually don't?" Nathan laughed. It felt, he searched for the word, important. Emma looked through the glass. It was. A week later, the doctors finally smiled during morning rounds. "He's ready." Nathan blinked. "Ready?" "To go home." The word seemed too big for the room. Nathan looked at the tiny sleeping baby. "Home." He whispered it twice, as though saying it aloud might somehow make it disappear. Driving home from the hospital, the infant carrier sat in the back seat. Nathan kept checking the mirror every few seconds. The baby slept peacefully. Emma followed behind in her own car. She had offered to help for one afternoon, just until Nathan settled in. Nothing more, or so she told herself. The house felt strangely different. It wasn't the large family home anymore. Nathan had sold it months earlier after leaving his father's company. Now, it was a small lake cottage, 1 bedroom downstairs, 1 upstairs, a tiny kitchen, a worn wooden porch. Nothing expensive, nothing impressive, just quiet. Emma carried a bag inside. Nathan carried the baby. He placed the carrier carefully beside the couch. Neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't awkward. It was peaceful. The kind neither had experienced in years. "I painted another nursery," Nathan admitted. Emma looked around. The room was simple. Soft blue walls, a handmade crib, a rocking chair bought secondhand, shelves filled with children's books, 1 small moon-shaped nightlight. Emma stopped walking. Nathan noticed. "I know," he said quietly. "I remembered." She looked at the little lamp. It wasn't identical to the one she'd broken years ago, but it was close enough. "I almost didn't buy it," Nathan admitted. "Then I thought, maybe some things deserve another chance." Emma didn't answer, because tears had arrived before words. Weeks became months. The baby grew stronger, rounder, louder. Nathan named him Noah, not because of biology, because of hope. "A man who survives storms deserves a name that remembers them," he explained one afternoon. Emma smiled. "I like it." She never planned to become part of their routine. It simply happened. One Saturday, she brought groceries. The next, she stayed for dinner. Another week, she folded tiny laundry while Nathan assembled a high chair incorrectly. They laughed. For the first time in years. Their laughter didn't hurt. One evening, Nathan burned dinner so badly the smoke alarm woke Noah. Emma laughed until she cried. Nathan stood holding a blackened frying pan. "I used to be good at this." "You never were," she corrected. You just had confidence. He smiled. I missed that. What? You laughing? Emma became quiet. So did I. Autumn arrived. Noah learned to crawl. The first person he crawled toward was Emma. Nathan watched from across the living room. He smiled. Then unexpectedly, his eyes filled. Emma picked Noah up. What? Nathan shook his head. Nothing. No. She smiled. What? He looked at both of them. I spent years believing family was something you inherited. He laughed softly. Turns out, sometimes it's something you rebuild. Emma didn't answer immediately. She kissed Noah's forehead, then quietly said, brick by brick. Nathan nodded. Brick by brick. Outside, the lake reflected the orange evening sky. Inside, 3 people sat together in a house built not on perfect beginnings, but on honest second chances. For the first time, it felt like home.